The night I bought my first house, I thought the hardest part of life was finally behind me. But I had no idea. My own family was about to become the biggest threat to everything I'd worked for. Subscribe to the channel for more stories. The glass of my tiny Phoenix apartment window felt cold against my forehead as I stared at the glowing skyline. After years of scraping, saving, and sacrificing, the impossible had become real. The keys in my pocket dug sharply into my hip, but I welcomed the pain, proof that this dream wasn't imagined. It belonged to me. I should have been floating in joy. Instead, my phone lit up with a name that always tightened my ribs. Mom. "Hello, Rona," she said, each word carefully measured. "Your father and I need you to come by the house." "Tomorrow evening," I swallowed. "Tomorrow. I'm moving into my new place, remember? I told you last month." A long, disappointed silence. "You actually went through with that?" she said. "We discussed you waiting." "No, she discussed it. I endured it silently." "I've been saving for years, Mom. The timing was right." "Your sister needs support right now," she snapped. "Vanessa is going through a transition." Vanessa was always going through something. It was practically her job. My phone buzzed again later, a text from her. "Must be nice having everything handed to you." I laughed in disbelief. Handed? I'd worked night shifts instead of going to prom, paid tuition while she dropped out of college 3 times, bought my car with money I saved while she got hers wrapped in a bow. Everything handed to me. Right. The next day, Patricia, my one reliable constant, helped me move. Coffee in one hand, tape in the other. She packed with the skill of a soldier. "Your parents coming?" she asked. I shook my head. She didn't push for details. Wise woman. By midnight, every box was in. An air mattress on the floor replaced a bed. But somehow it felt like the softest thing I'd ever slept on. Before drifting off, I looked around at the empty space, the echoing, beautiful emptiness. I did this. Me. But morning came with a phone call sharp enough to slice open the joy. "Rona," Mom demanded, "bring all your house paperwork and come home. Today." "Why?" "Just do it." She hung up. I stared at the ceiling fan above me as it spun slowly, like a warning. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Still, I drove to Scottsdale, back to the perfectly curated house where everything always looked more loving than it really was. My parents sat waiting. Vanessa lounged smugly on the couch. Mom began with the tone she used to give rules, not requests. "You bought a 3-bedroom home. Too much space for one person. Vanessa needs a place while she focuses on her future. We think your house would be perfect." I blinked. "You want Vanessa to live in my house?" "For minimal rent," Dad clarified. "How minimal?" $300 a month, Mom replied cheerfully like she'd offered a gift. I almost laughed again. "My mortgage alone was $1,500. You can pay the rest," Mom added. "It's an investment in your sister. And if I say no?" Her eyes hardened. "Then you're choosing selfishness over family." I finally understood. This wasn't a request. It was a claim. They believed my achievement belonged to them. A slow heat filled my chest. Not anger, clarity. "No," I said. A single word. The kind that changes everything. The room froze. Vanessa's jaw dropped open, then twisted. "You think you're better than us," she hissed. "Watch how far that gets you." I stood. And walked out. Their stares burned between my shoulder blades like bullets. Outside, the sun was setting beautifully over their world of entitlement. Inside me, a storm had just begun. The days that followed should have been peaceful. Fresh paint smells, unpacked boxes, and slow mornings with coffee in my kitchen. But peace is fragile when control slips through the fingers of people who believe they own you. For nearly a week, I heard nothing. Not a text. Not a guilt-laced voicemail. Silence and silence. From my parents. Is strategy. Patricia stopped by after work, ready with takeout and sarcasm. How's the queen of real estate? She joked, nudging me with her shoulder. I laughed, but something uneasy lingered in my stomach. They want Vanessa to move in, I admitted, for basically nothing, and they think I should pay the rest. Patricia's face scrunched. Wow, they really believe your success belongs to them. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. My silence was a yes. By the second week in my new home, I finally let myself relax. The house creaked at night, settling into the desert heat. I started hanging art, planning renovations, imagining a backyard fire pit. I was building a life. Then, the email arrived, a notification from the Maricopa County court system. At first I thought spam. Then I saw the words petition filed, civil family claim my blood iced. I clicked. Plaintiffs, Alan and Deborah Myers. Defendant, Rona Myers-Me. My own parents. My hands shook so violently I had to set the phone down. I read it again, and again, they were suing me for my house. The petition claimed their financial investment in raising their child created an implied agreement that she would support family members in need as restitution. Restitution. As if I were a debt, as if parenting me was a transaction. I tried to breathe, but the room felt too small. Too unfamiliar. Too suddenly unsafe. Patricia arrived within 20 minutes, uninvited but perfectly on time. She read the document twice, then whispered, "Your parents are insane." I nodded slowly. They don't want a house. They want control. And they think they lost it. We sat together on the living room floor, back against unopened boxes. The weight of the betrayal crashing over me. I called the only lawyer I knew, Beth, who had once mentioned family law cases with a grim kind of humor. She didn't laugh this time. "This is manipulative," Beth said, flipping through the case files. "But not impossible to fight. We'll need proof of every job, every dollar you saved, every moment they didn't support you." Proof? That was the one thing I'd always kept. When no one backs you, you build your own receipts. Still, fear crept in. Could they win? Beth looked me in the eyes, honest, not comforting. In family court, emotions get twisted into leverage. We prepare for the truth, and we fight. That night, the house didn't feel like home. It felt like a fragile trophy someone else was trying to rip from my hands. I barely slept. The ceiling fan above me spun like a ticking clock, counting down to a battle I never wanted. The next morning, I stood in my kitchen staring at the cabinets, thinking, I did everything right. Why does it feel like I'm being punished for succeeding? The clock ticked louder. I realized my parents hadn't just drawn a line. They'd crossed it, dragging me into a courtroom to prove I didn't owe them my life. And standing there in my echoing kitchen, one truth hit me harder than anything. This wasn't about Vanessa. This was about control. And they were terrified I'd finally escaped it. I looked at the house keys lying on the counter. My house wasn't just a roof or a mortgage. It was proof I had chosen myself. And now, they were determined to destroy that choice. The courthouse smelled like old wood and colder judgment. I clutched a folder filled with 13 years of pay stubs, tax returns, and proof that my life had been built without handouts. Proof they hoped didn't exist. My parents sat on the opposite side of the courtroom, dressed like grieving saints at a funeral I didn't realize was mine. Vanessa sat behind them with folded arms, confident, certain she would soon be moving into a house she didn't earn. Beth leaned toward me, Remember, speak calmly. Let facts do the damage. It wasn't reassurance. It was strategy. The judge, a woman in her early 60s with silver glasses and eyes that could slice steel, called us to begin. My father took the stand first. His voice wavered just enough to sound sympathetic. "We raised both our daughters," he said. "We gave them opportunities. We had an understanding that when Rona succeeded, she would help her sister." Beth stood. Her tone was calm, but sharp. "What opportunities exactly?" My father blinked. "We paid for school, gave them a home." "You paid for Vanessa's university," Beth corrected. "Not Rona's. You told Rona to take out loans." He stiffened. "And the car you bought for Vanessa?" Beth continued. "Why didn't Rona receive one?" "We helped based on need," Dad snapped. "So, Vanessa needed thousands of dollars, multiple tuition payments, credit card bailouts." Beth paused. "And Rona needed nothing." "Because she worked?" Silence answered. Then it was my mother's turn. She dabbed fake tears as she told the judge she loved both daughters equally. Beth approached slowly. "How much money did you give Vanessa since she turned 18? "I don't keep track. Court records and your bank transfers show approximately $160,000. Gasps filled the room. My mother froze. "And how much did you give Rona?" My mother stared at her lap. "Not much. Try $500 over 7 years, Beth clarified. "In gift cards." The judge's eyes narrowed. Vanessa was called next. Bright lipstick, shiny jewelry, entitlement disguised as pain. "Rona makes everything about money," she said, voice trembling. "She thinks she's better than me because I struggle." Beth stepped forward. "How many jobs have you held longer than a year?" Vanessa faltered. "I've had many, 9 jobs in 6 years. Your longest was 8 months. Beth didn't blink. "Who pays your bills when you run out of money?" "My parents help," she muttered. "So family helps struggling members," Beth repeated. Yet when Rona was working doubles and couldn't afford a meal better than ramen, where was the help then? Vanessa stared at the floor. "They didn't offer," she whispered. "No further?" Questions. Now it was my turn. Walking to the witness stand felt like walking into fire, but the truth protected me better than armor. I told them everything. The missed proms, the warehouse night shifts, the community college struggle, the years of saving, the sacrifices, the silence. I wasn't supported, I said steady and clear. I succeeded anyway, and now they're punishing me for not failing. My parents' lawyer tried to twist my words, asking if I believed I owed my parents nothing. I answered, I owe them respect, not repayment for being born. When I stepped down, my chest was tight, but my back stood straighter than it ever had. The judge took a long breath and closed the file. "I'll deliver my ruling soon," she said. But in her eyes, I could see the truth had already spoken loud enough. The courtroom fell quiet, every movement frozen as Judge Morrison returned with her written ruling. My heart hammered against my ribs, loud enough that surely the entire room could hear. She adjusted her glasses and began in a tone that was both steady and devastatingly clear. The plaintiffs claim that raising their daughter formed an implied agreement of future compensation. However, providing basic care for a minor child is a legal obligation, not a transactional exchange. Mom stiffened. Dad's fingers tightened on the table edge. The judge continued. The evidence demonstrates significant disparity in financial support after both daughters reached adulthood. One daughter received approximately $160,000 in continued assistance. The other received roughly $500. Her eyes lifted. Finding my parents. You cannot claim equal investment when the facts prove otherwise. Vanessa's face drained of color. Judge Morrison set the papers down. There is no legal basis for the plaintiff's claim. Therefore, the case is dismissed with prejudice, Mom gasped. Dad's jaw dropped open. But the judge wasn't done. It is the decision of this court that the plaintiffs must pay the defendant's legal fees. That was the final blow. The gavel cracked like thunder. Done. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Then Beth placed a steady hand over mine. We won, she whispered. I exhaled for the first time in weeks. Vanessa stormed out, heels striking the floor like angry hammers. My parents approached, but their attorney stepped between us, already embarrassed. Dad hissed, "You've destroyed this family." I didn't flinch. You destroyed trust. Big difference. Mom's eyes filled with hate disguised as heartbreak. You chose money over us. No, I corrected softly. I finally chose me, Beth intervened. Voice firm. All future communication goes through my office. Their fury followed them as they left, because blame is easier than accountability. Outside the courthouse, sunlight washed over me like a baptism. My knees wobbled, but my soul stood tall. I'd defended my home, my existence, my worth. But winning a battle doesn't immediately heal the wound the battle came from. I had lost something, the illusion of family that never really existed. When I reached my house that evening, my house, I set the keys on the counter and touched the wall gently, like thanking it for staying with me through the storm. That night, I slept without fear for the first time in months, but the war wasn't done with me yet. A week later, I received a message from Dennis, my old grocery manager. He said he'd overheard my mother telling neighbors that I had sued them and refused treatment for my mental instability. Lies. More lies. Anything to rewrite their shame. Beth advised me to let it fade. Truth doesn't need to shout. It outlives lies, but anger hardens resolve. If they wanted to rewrite my story, I would write it louder. By living well, on my terms, and the first step was understanding. My family didn't lose me. They threw me away the moment I stopped being useful. Months passed. My house slowly transformed into a home, not just legally, but emotionally. I renovated the kitchen. I painted walls in colors that made me smile. I learned recipes beyond survival, and I adopted a dog, Copper, a creature who loved without keeping score. Patricia and I celebrated my promotion with wine and laughter, her voice echoing warmth inside. Rooms once filled with anxiety. I learned the beauty of mornings with soft sunlight instead of court documents. What I didn't learn or need was how to miss people who tried to break me. Relatives reached out. Some apologized for not stepping in sooner. Others shared their own scars from my parents' behavior. It turned out I wasn't the first they tried to control, just the first who refused to surrender. The silence between us became permanent. But silence can be peace. When noise was only ever harm, Vanessa kept living off excuses, relationships collapsing under her weight. My parents found themselves increasingly alone, victims of problems they created with their own entitlement. Sometimes I thought about reconciliation. Then I remembered the lawsuit, the courtroom stairs, the venom in my mother's voice when she said I should be ashamed of success, and I knew. Some bridges burn exactly as they should. One evening, Copper curled at my feet as the desert sky bled orange and coral. I sipped tea on my patio, the place I once feared losing. I thought about 15-year-old me, the girl flipping burgers to pay. For her future, who never asked for help because she'd been trained not to expect it. That girl built this life. Every tile, every paycheck, every breath of freedom, I whispered into the warm evening air. We made it. not just despite them, but stronger because I walked away. I didn't win a house. I won myself. And that, more than anything, it was worth every sacrifice.